This story is a work of fiction. It does not glorify organized crime. It depicts the destruction caused by criminal enterprises and the moral cost of seeking redemption through betrayal. All characters are imaginary. Content may be disturbing. Viewer discretion advised. The office tower stood dark except for the 32nd floor. Midnight in Manhattan, and most of the building had been empty since 6. Security guards made their rounds on the ground level, footsteps echoing through marble lobbies that smelled like cleaning solution, and the faint residue of 1,000 cigarettes smoked outside the revolving doors over decades. On the 32nd floor, in a corner office with no name on the door and windows that looked out over the East River, Dominic Caruso sat alone at a conference table made of wood older than most of the building's tenants. The grain ran dark and deep, polished by 70 years of handshakes and signed agreements, and palms pressed flat while men made promises they sometimes kept. Dominic was 62. He looked older tonight. The kind of older that comes from the inside, not from time. His hair, still mostly dark, had gone silver at the temples in the past 6 months. His hands, which had once been steady enough to sign documents without reading them because he already knew every word, now tremored slightly when he held a pen too long. He had been the boss of the Caruso family for 25 years. Before that, his father Vincent had run things for 38. Before that, his grandfather Antonio had built the foundation in the years after he came through Ellis Island with nothing but a name and the kind of hunger that turns men into builders or destroys them trying. 3 generations, 92 years, and tonight in this office, with the city breathing its electric orange glow through the windows, Dominic Caruso was preparing to let it all go. Not by choice. 6 weeks ago, a doctor at Mount Sinai had shown him scans of his brain. The images looked like storm clouds, the doctor said. Areas of deterioration spreading slowly but inevitably through the regions that controlled memory, decision-making, personality. Early-onset Alzheimer's disease. The same thing that had killed his father, though Vincent had made it to 74 before the fog rolled in. Dominic was 62 and already forgetting names of men he had known for 30 years. The doctor gave him 18 months, maybe 2 years if the progression was slow. After that, he would not remember his own name, would not recognize his son, would not know that he had once controlled an empire that stretched from the docks of Newark to the construction sites of Queens, from the labor unions that built half of New York to the waste management companies that cleaned up after. 18 months to transfer everything to Marcus. His son, 35 years old, Wharton Business School, 12 years working his way through the family's legitimate operations, learning the clean side of money, the part that could be discussed in boardrooms and filed with the IRS. Marcus had the intelligence, had the discipline, had the respect of the 5 captains who ran the family's divisions like regional managers in a corporation that happened to operate on both sides of the law. But Marcus had never killed anyone, had never ordered it done, had never stood in a room and made the kind of decision that turns a man's stomach and hardens it at the same time, the kind of choice that separates leaders from followers in a world where mercy is a luxury and hesitation is a death sentence. Dominic was not certain his son was ready. More than that, he was not certain his son wanted to be. But tradition was tradition, and the Caruso family had a test. Every boss, going back to Antonio in 1932, had created a cipher, a document encoding the family's deepest secrets, written in a code so complex that only someone who truly understood the culture, the language, the history could decode it. The cipher was not symbolic. It was practical. A man who could not read the family's past had no business controlling its future. Dominic had spent the last 3 months preparing his own version. 200 pages, handwritten in the dialect his grandfather had spoken, mixed with legal codes and religious Latin and numerical sequences that meant nothing unless you understood where the numbers came from. He had hidden every significant event from the past 25 years inside those pages. Every deal, every alliance, every resolution of problems that could not be resolved through lawyers or negotiations. He had left it for Marcus to decode. 90 days. That was the tradition. 3 months to prove you could read the language of your ancestors and understand what it meant to carry their legacy forward. The family had rules about succession, protocols that had been established by Antonio and refined by Vincent and maintained by Dominic. The 5 captains operated independently in their territories, but they reported to Dominic through a consigliere, a counselor who filtered requests and managed communication. No captain contacted the boss directly unless summoned. No captain contacted the designated heir except through formal channels approved by the boss. It was a system designed to prevent exactly what had destroyed other families. Ambitious underbosses going around the chain of command, private deals, coups disguised as conversations. Marcus, as the heir, was supposed to be insulated, protected, given time to learn without being pressured by men who wanted favors or sought to influence the succession. The protocol had held for 25 years under Dominic's leadership. Every captain knew it. Every captain followed it. Until they did not. The door to the conference room opened. Dominic looked up, his mind still clear enough in this moment to recognize the footsteps before the face. Heavy, confident, the walk of a man who had never been told no and would not know what to do with the word if he heard it. Marcus Caruso entered the room alone. Tall, lean, with their family's dark eyes and a jawline that came from his mother's side. He wore a suit that cost $3,000 but looked like he had forgotten he was wearing it, the mark of real money. You stopped noticing it after a while. Father and son looked at each other across the table. The city hummed outside. A siren wailed somewhere far below, threading through the canyons of buildings like a needle through fabric. Dominic spoke first. His voice, which had once commanded rooms full of men twice his size, came out quieter now, measured, the voice of someone conserving energy. "Sit down." Marcus sat. Dominic slid a metal lockbox across the table. It was not large. Maybe the size of a briefcase, brushed steel with a combination lock that required 6 digits. The box had belonged to Vincent and to Antonio before him. Each boss had used it to pass the cipher to the next generation. Marcus looked at the box, but did not touch it. "You know what this is," Dominic said. "Yes." "You know what it means." Marcus nodded once. His face gave away nothing. He had learned that from Dominic. Never let them see what you're thinking. Never let them know if you're afraid or angry or uncertain. The moment they see it, they use it. Dominic leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. "I'm stepping down in 6 months. The board of captains will vote on the succession. But before that vote happens, you have to decode what's in this box. It's not symbolic, Marcus. It's the test. You decode it, you understand the business. You understand where we came from and what it took to build this. If you can't decode it..." He let the sentence hang. Marcus finally reached out and touched the lockbox. His fingers traced the combination dial. "And if I choose not to..." Dominic felt something cold move through his chest. Not surprise. He had known this question was coming. Had known it for years, really, ever since Marcus was 8 years old and had seen something he should not have seen. A conversation in a basement. A resolution. The look on the boy's face afterward, the way he had stopped meeting his father's eyes for weeks. "Then the board will choose someone else," Dominic said. "Angelo Benedetti, probably. He's been positioning himself for 3 years. And if Angelo takes over, this family will go back to the old ways. Blood, territory wars. The kind of business that gets people killed for no reason except that someone felt disrespected." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Is that a threat? It's a fact. You're saying if I don't take over, people will die. Dominic met his son's eyes. People die either way, Marcus. That's the business. But the way your grandfather ran things, the way I run things now, we made it smaller, cleaner, white-collar where we can be. Violence only when there's no other option. And Gilo doesn't think that way. He's 55 and he still thinks like it's 1975. You want that future for this family. Marcus stood up. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets, and looked out at the river. A barge moved slowly south, lights blinking red and green against the black water. How long do I have? Marcus asked. 90 days. And if I can't decode it in 90 days? Then you're not ready. Marcus turned around. His face was still unreadable, but something in his posture had changed. A tension in his shoulders. What happens to you? Dominic smiled, though there was no warmth in it. I have Alzheimer's disease, early onset. Same thing that killed your grandfather. I've got 18 months, maybe 2 years. After that, I won't remember my own name. So what happens to me doesn't matter anymore. What happens to you does. For the first time, Marcus's composure cracked. Not much, just a flicker in his eyes. The kind of reaction you only see if you know someone well enough to read the micro-expressions they try to hide. When were you going to tell me? Marcus asked quietly. I'm telling you now. Marcus looked at the lockbox, then at his father, then back at the box. What's the combination? He asked. Dominic told him 6 numbers, the date of Marcus's birth. A small mercy, and the only one Dominic would give him in this process. Marcus opened the box. Inside, wrapped in cloth that smelled like old paper and older secrets, was a manuscript. 200 pages, handwritten in ink that had faded in places to the color of rust. The text was dense, lines packed so tightly together that they looked like fabric woven from words. And between the lines, symbols, marks that could have been punctuation or could have been something else entirely. Marcus lifted the first page carefully. He read the first line, and Dominic watched his son's face for the moment of recognition. It did not come. This is Calabrese dialect, Marcus said slowly. Grandfather's village. Among other things. Marcus read further, his brow furrowed. He turned the page, scanned the second, then the third. His hands moved faster. Page after page, his eyes tracking lines that refused to cohere into meaning. After 5 minutes, he set the manuscript down. I can't read this, Marcus said. Not yet. That's why you have 90 days. I speak Italian. I've studied our family history. I know the business inside and out. But this, he gestured at the manuscript, this isn't language, this is code. Dominic nodded. Your great-grandfather Antonio created the first cipher in 1932. It was his way of making sure the family's secrets stayed in the family. Only someone who grew up in the culture, who understood the dialect and the context and the history, could decode it. Your grandfather added to it. I added to it. And now you have to prove you can read it before you inherit what it protects. Marcus picked up the manuscript again. He held it carefully, like something fragile, though the pages had survived 92 years and would probably survive another 92 if kept properly. What if I hire experts? Marcus asked. Linguists, cryptographers. You can try. Your grandfather hired 6 professors when it was his turn. They spent 2 months and decoded 8 pages. You need to decode all of it. Marcus set the manuscript back in the lockbox. He closed the lid slowly, and Dominic heard the soft click of metal on metal. I'll do it, Marcus said. Dominic stood up. He walked around the table and put a hand on his son's shoulder. The gesture felt strange. They were not a family that touched often. Physical affection had been drowned out by business years ago, replaced by handshakes and nods and the occasional embrace at funerals. "Marcus," Dominic said, and his voice was quieter now, almost tender. "I know you don't want this life. I've known it since you were 8 years old. But this life doesn't care what you want. It only cares what you choose. And right now, you're choosing to try. That's enough." Marcus looked at his father's hand on his shoulder, but did not move away. "What if I decode it and decide not to take over?" Marcus asked. Dominic removed his hand. He walked back to his chair and sat down heavily, suddenly tired in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour. "Then at least you'll know what you're walking away from," Dominic said. "And that's more than most men get." Marcus picked up the lockbox. It was heavier than it looked, the weight of 92 years of secrets compressed into 200 pages of handwritten code. He walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "Dad," he said, and it was the first time in months he had used that word instead of Dominic or sir. "I'm sorry about the diagnosis." Dominic nodded. "So am I." Marcus left. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Dominic was alone again in the conference room with the city glowing outside, and his mind already starting to forget the details of the conversation he had just had. He would forget all of it eventually. The business, the empire, his own name. But for now, in this moment, he remembered enough to hope that his son was smart enough to decode the cipher and brave enough to walk away from what it revealed. Because the cipher did not just contain the family's secrets. It contained Dominic's confession. Every crime he had committed, every compromise he had made, every person who had been hurt because he chose profit over principle. All of it encoded in a language Marcus would have to learn to read. And when Marcus finally decoded it, he would understand why his father was giving him the choice to refuse the inheritance. Some legacies are not meant to be passed down. Some are meant to end. 3 weeks after Marcus left his father's office with the lockbox, he sat in a warehouse in New Jersey, surrounded by 8 people who were, theoretically, the best in the world at what they did. 3 cryptographers who had worked for the National Security Agency before retiring into private consulting. 2 professors of Italian linguistics, one from Columbia, one from Yale. 2 historians who specialized in organized crime, both with published books and tenure-track positions. And 1 Catholic priest, Father Miguel Santos, 70 years old, who had spent 40 years studying ecclesiastical Latin and had translated documents for the Vatican that had not seen daylight since the Renaissance. The warehouse belonged to one of the family's shell companies. Officially, it stored imported goods. Unofficially, it was a place where conversations could happen without being overheard, and documents could be examined without being photographed. The manuscript was spread across a folding table in the center of the room, 200 pages arranged in neat rows under portable work lights that turned the old paper the color of bone. The 8 experts circled the table like surgeons around an operating table, each one focused on a different section, each one making notes in handwriting that grew more cramped and frustrated as the hours passed. Marcus stood near the door, arms crossed, watching. He had not slept well in 3 weeks. The manuscript occupied his thoughts the way a splinter works its way deeper under skin, impossible to ignore, painful to touch. Dr. Helen Voss, the lead cryptographer, a woman in her 60s with silver hair cut short and glasses that magnified her eyes, looked up from the page she was studying. "Mr. Caruso," she said, and her voice carried the careful tone of someone delivering bad news they had rehearsed. "We need to talk." Marcus walked to the table. "Tell me." Dr. Voss gestured to the manuscript. "This document uses at least 5 different encoding systems simultaneously. Calabrese dialect mixed with what appears to be Fibonacci numerical sequences. Legal code references that might be dates or might be locations. Religious Latin that's not standard ecclesiastical but some kind of regional variation. And these symbols, she pointed to the marks between lines. We can't identify half of them. They don't match any known cipher alphabet. One of the professors, a thin man named Dr. Castellano who taught at Columbia and had written his dissertation on pre-unification Italian dialects, shook his head slowly. It's not just encoding, he said. It's cultural encryption. Whoever wrote this assumed the reader would have context we don't have, oral traditions, family stories, knowledge that was never written down because it didn't need to be. You'd have to have grown up in that world to understand the references. Father Santos, the priest, added his perspective. His voice was soft, accented with the Spanish he had spoken before English, before Latin. The religious sections are not standard liturgy, he said. They're prayers, yes, but modified, personal. Whoever wrote this was using the structure of the Mass as a framework, but the content is. It's like a private language between the writer and God, or between the writer and someone who knew the same prayers the same way. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest, a pressure that had nothing to do with breathing. Bottom line, he said, can you decode it? The 8 experts looked at each other. The kind of look that passes between professionals who have reached the same conclusion independently and are now deciding who has to say it out loud. Dr. Voss spoke. Mr. Caruso, we've been working for 3 weeks. We've managed to decode 8 pages out of 200. At this rate, it would take us a year to finish. And that's assuming the difficulty doesn't increase, which it probably will. The later sections appear more complex. So you're saying it's impossible? I'm saying it's impossible for us. This cipher wasn't designed to be broken by experts with degrees and security clearances. It was designed to be read by someone who lived the culture it came from. Someone who spoke the dialect at home, learned the family history from grandparents, understood the context organically. One of the historians, a younger man named Dr. Rourke, who had written a book about the Irish mob in Boston, cleared his throat. Mr. Caruso, I don't want to overstep, but I have to ask. Why did your grandfather create something this difficult to decode? What's the point of leaving a legacy if the next generation can't access it? Marcus looked at the manuscript. 200 pages of his family's history, encrypted so thoroughly that even the best minds in their fields could not crack it. The point, Marcus said slowly, is to make sure the next generation deserves it. Dr. Rourke nodded, though he did not look convinced. Dr. Voss began packing up her materials. The others followed her lead. They had been paid well for 3 weeks of work that produced almost nothing. They would be paid even better to forget they had ever been here. Mr. Caruso, Dr. Voss said as she zipped her laptop bag closed. If you want my honest assessment, you need someone who thinks like your grandfather. Someone who grew up speaking that dialect, who learned those prayers, who understands the culture not as an academic subject but as lived experience. I don't know if that person exists anymore. That generation is mostly gone. Marcus thanked them. He paid them. He watched them leave the warehouse one by one until he was alone with the manuscript under the harsh white lights. He checked his watch. 11:47 at night. In 13 minutes, it would be tomorrow, day 22 of 90. He had 68 days left, and he was further from decoding the cipher than he had been when he started. Marcus sat down at the table. He picked up the first page and read the opening line for the 100th time. The words looked like Italian, but refused to mean anything. Like staring at a photograph of someone you should recognize, but can't quite place. He thought about his father, alone in that corner office, mind slowly dissolving. He thought about Angelo Benedetti, waiting in the wings, ready to take over if Marcus failed. He thought about the empire his great-grandfather had built and the secrets it contained, and the weight of 92 years pressing down on 200 pages of paper. And he thought about the one thing Dr. Voss had said that stuck with him. You need someone who thinks like your grandfather. Someone who grew up in that world. Someone who learned it organically, not academically. Someone who was supposed to be extinct, but maybe, somewhere in this city of 8 million people, still existed. Marcus did not know where to find that person. But he was running out of time. And desperate men make desperate choices. 37 days into the 90-day deadline, Marcus Caruso sat alone in the conference room on the 32nd floor of the office tower, the manuscript spread before him like a puzzle with pieces that refused to fit together. It was 11:15 at night. The cleaning crew had started their shift an hour ago. He could hear the distant hum of vacuum cleaners on other floors, the occasional clatter of a trash cart in the hallway. He had sent the experts away 2 weeks ago. Since then, he had been working alone, cross-referencing the dialect phrases with online dictionaries, trying to map the numerical sequences to dates or addresses or financial transactions. He had filled 3 legal pads with notes that led nowhere. His eyes burned. His hands shook slightly from too much coffee and not enough sleep. Page 47 lay open in front of him. The section he had been staring at for the past hour contained what looked like a ledger entry. 2 columns of numbers, separated by a symbol that might have been a cross or might have been a multiplication sign. Below the numbers, a phrase in Calabrese that he could almost translate, something about bread and wine and oil. He knew those words meant something other than food. His father had told him once, years ago, that the old-timers used food metaphors for business. Bread meant payoffs. Wine meant laundered money. Oil meant protection rackets. But the numbers still made no sense, and the symbol between them could mean anything. Marcus leaned back in his chair and pressed his palms against his eyes until he saw colors. The door to the conference room opened. He looked up, expecting to see one of the captains or maybe his father, who sometimes came to the office late when the Alzheimer's made sleep impossible, and the present felt more confusing than the past. Instead, he saw a woman in her late 40s carrying a gray plastic bin for trash. She wore the uniform of the building's cleaning service, dark blue shirt, dark blue pants, name tag that said Teresa. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that showed threads of gray. Her face had the kind of tiredness that comes from working multiple jobs, the exhaustion that settles into bone and becomes part of who you are. She paused in the doorway when she saw him. "Sorry, Mr. Caruso," she said. Her voice carried a faint accent, something that might have been Italian a generation or 2 back, softened by decades of English. "I didn't know anyone was still here. I can come back." Marcus waved a hand. "It's fine. Do what you need to do." She entered quietly, moving around the edges of the room, emptying the small trash bins near the credenza and the coffee station. She worked efficiently, without wasted motion, the way people work when they've done the same task 1,000 times and no longer think about it. Marcus turned back to the manuscript. He tried to focus on the numbers, but his concentration had been shattered by the interruption. He became aware of the woman's presence in his peripheral vision, the soft sounds of her movements. She was wiping down the credenza now, working her way toward the conference table. She glanced at the manuscript spread across the surface, then looked away quickly. Professional courtesy. Don't stare at the boss's work. But then she stopped. Not dramatically, not suddenly. Just a pause in her motion, her hand hovering over the table with the cleaning cloth, her eyes fixed on the page Marcus had been studying. 4 seconds, maybe 5. Marcus noticed because he had been trained to notice. His father had taught him, people tell you more with their silences than with their words. Watch what makes them stop. Watch what makes them hesitate. "Something wrong," Marcus asked. Teresa blinked and resumed wiping the table. No, sir, sorry. You stopped. You were looking at the manuscript. She straightened up, the cloth still in her hand. I didn't mean to, I know it's private. But you saw something. She hesitated, the kind of hesitation that comes from weighing whether speaking will cost you your job. The symbols, she said finally, pointing to the cluster that Marcus had been trying to decode. Between the numbers, they reminded me of something. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. What? Teresa set down the cleaning cloth. She moved closer to the table, slowly, like someone approaching something fragile. My grandmother, she said. She came from Calabria in the 1950s. She used to write letters to family back home, and she used symbols like these. Not a code exactly, more like shorthand. The diamond meant money. The cross meant family. The circle with the cross inside meant a deal, an agreement. Marcus stood up. Your grandmother was from Calabria. A village near Reggio, very small. She married my grandfather, who was Irish, so our last name is Flynn now. But I grew up hearing her speak the dialect, watching her write letters. She kept journals in the old style, 2 columns just like this. She pointed to the ledger entry on page 47. 1 column for what you tell the authorities, 1 column for what actually happened. Marcus felt something electric move through his chest. Hope, maybe, or the thing that lives just before hope. Can you read this? He asked, gesturing to the page. Teresa leaned over the table. She studied the text for a long moment, her lips moving slightly as if sounding out words in her head. Not all of it, she said. The dialect is old, older than what my grandmother spoke, but this line here. She traced the phrase Marcus had been struggling with. Pane e vino e olio, bread and wine and oil, those aren't just words, they're business terms. My grandmother used them when she talked about my grandfather's store. Bread meant cash payments under the table. Wine meant money that got moved around, cleaned. Oil meant protection, paying someone to make sure nothing bad happened to your business. Marcus sat down slowly. How do you know this? Teresa straightened up. My grandmother ran the books for my grandfather's grocery store for 40 years. She taught me the system when I was a kid. She said it was important to know the old ways, even if we didn't use them anymore. She died when I was 16, but I remember. Marcus looked at the manuscript with new eyes. What had been incomprehensible 30 seconds ago now seemed to shimmer with possibility. The symbols between the numbers, he said. If the diamond means money, and the cross means family, and the circle cross means a deal, what do the numbers mean? Teresa studied the page again. I'm not sure, but in my grandmother's system, the first column was always the date. The second column was the amount, and the symbol told you what kind of transaction it was. Marcus grabbed a legal pad and started writing. If Teresa was right, if this was a ledger system disguised as encrypted text, then the numbers might not be code at all. They might be literal. Dates, amounts, locations. He looked up at Teresa, who was watching him with an expression he could not quite read. Curiosity, maybe, or concern. What's your name? Marcus asked. Teresa Flynn. Teresa, I need your help. He heard the desperation in his own voice and did not care. I've been trying to decode this manuscript for 5 weeks. I hired 8 experts with PhDs and security clearances. They decoded 8 pages in 3 weeks. You just decoded more in 3 minutes than they managed in 21 days. Teresa took a step back. Mr. Caruso, I'm just a janitor. I clean offices. I don't know anything about whatever this is. This is my family's history. Business records going back to 1932. My father left it for me to decode as a test. If I can't read it, I don't inherit the family business. I have 53 days left, and you're the first person who's been able to make sense of any of it. Teresa looked at the manuscript, then at Marcus, then at the door like she was calculating the distance. "I have 2 other jobs," she said. "I work here 11 to 7. Then I have a morning shift at a hotel in Midtown. Then I clean apartments in the evenings. I'm barely keeping up with my bills as it is. I can't take time off to." "I'll pay you $10,000, Marcus said. "1 month of work. Nights only after your shift here. Help me decode this manuscript. That's it." Teresa stared at him. $10,000. "Yes. For translating old Italian and explaining symbols my grandmother used. For saving my inheritance." She was quiet for a long time. Marcus watched her face, watched the calculation happening behind her eyes. $10,000 was real money. The kind of money that changed things, paid off debts, bought time, created space between desperation and survival. "What exactly is your family business, Mr. Caruso?" Teresa asked quietly. Marcus felt the weight of the question. The truth was complicated, dangerous, the kind of truth that made people uncomfortable or scared or complicit. "Import-export," he said, which was technically true. "Legitimate operations, mostly. But my grandfather and great-grandfather were involved in things that were less legitimate. This manuscript contains the history of all of it. My father wants me to understand where we came from before I take over." Teresa nodded slowly. She did not look convinced, but she did not look ready to run either. "If I help you," she said, "and we decode something illegal, something that could get someone in trouble, what happens to me?" "Nothing," Marcus said. "You're a translator. You didn't commit any crimes. You're just helping me understand my family history." "But if the police—" "No police. This is private, family business." Teresa picked up her cleaning supplies. For a moment, Marcus thought she was leaving, thought he had pushed too hard or offered too much or revealed too much. But she set the supplies back down. "My son starts college next year," she said. "Tuition is $38,000. I've saved $11,000. I'm working 3 jobs to make up the difference, and I'm still going to be short. $10,000 would." She did not finish the sentence. "I'll give you $5,000 up front," Marcus said. "Tonight, cash, the other 5 when we finish." Teresa looked at the manuscript one more time. Then she looked at Marcus. "1 month," she said. "Nights only. And if at any point I feel like this is going to get me in trouble, I walk away. Deal." Marcus extended his hand across the table. Teresa shook it. Her grip was firm, calloused, the handshake of someone who had worked with their hands their entire life and knew the value of what they were agreeing to. Marcus opened his briefcase and counted out $5,000 in $100 bills. Money that was supposed to be for operating expenses, but could be justified as a consulting fee if anyone asked questions. Teresa took the money. She folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. "Okay," she said. "Show me what you've decoded so far." Marcus smiled for the first time in 5 weeks. They worked together every night for the next 2 weeks, 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., in the conference room with the city sleeping below and the manuscript slowly revealing its secrets between them. 14 nights after Teresa Flynn first saw the symbols that reminded her of her grandmother's handwriting, she and Marcus Caruso sat across from each other in the conference room with 93 decoded pages spread between them like a map of sins. The pages told stories in numbers and symbols and Calabrese phrases that translated into English but meant something else entirely. Bread that was not bread, wine that never touched lips, oil that lubricated machinery made of flesh and bone and fear. Marcus had learned to read his family's language the way Teresa's grandmother had written it. 2 columns, 2 truths, What you show the world and what actually happened. The space between them was where the Caruso family had lived for 92 years. Page 17 described a construction project in Newark in 1958. The left column showed costs, permits, legitimate contractor fees. The right column showed payments to union officials who made sure the wrong inspectors looked at the wrong buildings at the right times. The symbol between them was a diamond inside a circle, money inside an agreement. Page 34 documented a waste management contract from 1972. 3 trucks, 2 routes, 1 landfill. Except the numbers in the right column did not match the tonnage in the left. The difference was the space where things disappeared, not just garbage. The symbol was a cross with a line through it. Family business resolved. Page 61 listed pension fund contributions from 1987. The left column matched what the accountants filed with the state. The right column showed where 40% of the money actually went. Offshore accounts, shell companies, real estate purchased under names that did not exist. The symbol was 3 diamonds in a triangle, money laundering. Teresa had been quiet for the past hour, reading page after page, her face growing more still with each revelation. Marcus watched her the way you watch someone walking toward the edge of something they cannot see yet, but you can. She was reading page 87 now. Her finger traced the lines slowly, translating the Calabrese in her head before speaking it aloud. 2012, she said. Her voice was flat, professional, the tone people use when they are trying not to feel what they are feeling. Construction incident, scaffold collapse, 1 fatality, inspector bribed $50,000, settlement to widow $25,000, no admission of fault. She stopped. Marcus already knew what was on page 87. He had decoded it 3 days ago and had been waiting for Teresa to reach it, wondering if she would recognize the date before she saw the name. Teresa set the page down carefully. She folded her hands on the table in front of her. When she spoke, her voice was controlled in a way that suggested enormous effort. "What was the name of the worker who died?" she asked. Marcus could have lied, could have said the manuscript did not include names, only incidents. But they had been working together for 2 weeks, and something had formed between them that was not quite friendship, but was built on the same foundation. Trust, honesty in a world designed around its opposite. "Sean Flynn," Marcus said quietly. The date was April 19th, 2012. Teresa nodded once. A small movement of her head that acknowledged she had heard and understood, and was now processing information that changed the architecture of her entire life. "My husband," she said. It was not a question. "Yes." "The scaffold that killed him. Your family paid the inspector to pass it even though it was faulty." "Yes." "And the $25,000 settlement I received. The one I thought was the construction company being decent. That was your family paying me to stay quiet." "You didn't know there was anything to stay quiet about. You thought it was an accident." Teresa looked at him with eyes that had gone very dark. "It was not an accident." "No." She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city, which glowed with its usual indifference to human grief. Manhattan at 3 in the morning was beautiful in the way that distance makes anything beautiful. From far enough away, even tragedy looks like light. Marcus did not move, did not speak. He had known this moment was coming since the night Teresa agreed to help him. Had known she would eventually decode the page that connected her life to his family's business. He had hoped it would come later, after they finished, after he paid her the remaining $5,000, and she could walk away with enough money to convince herself it had been worth it. But the manuscript did not care about timing. Teresa turned from the window. "How many others?" she asked. "How many what?" "Pages like this. Incidents where someone died or got hurt because your family chose profit over safety. Marcus looked at the decoded pages spread across the table. He had been counting without meaning to. 17, he said. In 92 years. 17 incidents where someone died or was seriously injured as a result of decisions my family made. 17 people. 17 incidents. Some involved multiple casualties. Teresa walked back to the table. She picked up page 87 and read it again, as if hoping the words might have changed when she was not looking. I raised 2 children on that $25,000, she said. It was the only reason we did not lose the apartment. The only reason my sons could stay in the same school, keep their friends, have some kind of stability after their father died. I thought someone cared. I thought the construction company, despite everything, had done right by us. She set the page down. It was blood money, she said. Marcus wanted to say something that would make it different. That would reframe the transaction into something she could live with. But he was the son of a man who had spent 25 years learning that some truths cannot be softened. Yes, Marcus said, it was. Teresa sat down. She stared at the manuscript for a long time. Marcus could see her mind working through the implications, the calculus of complicity. If she had known where the money came from, she would not have taken it. But she had taken it, had used it, had fed her children with it and paid rent with it and built a life on top of it. The fact that she had not known did not change what the money was. What are you going to do with this? Teresa asked finally. When we finish decoding it, what happens to all these secrets? Marcus had been asking himself the same question for 14 nights. The answer kept changing depending on how tired he was, how angry, how aware of the weight his father was trying to pass to him. I don't know, he said. You must have some idea. You are not stupid, Mr. Caruso. You did not hire 8 experts and then hire me just to read your family's confession for entertainment. My father wants me to take over the business. The cipher is a test. If I can decode it, I prove I understand the family. I prove I am ready. And if you cannot decode it? Someone else takes over, probably Angelo Benedetti. He is 55, ambitious, dangerous. My father says if Angelo runs things, the family goes back to the old ways. More violence, more bodies, more pages like 87. Teresa absorbed this. So your father is saying, take over or people will die. More or less. But if you take over, you become responsible for whatever the family does next. You become the man writing the next 200 pages. Yes. Those are terrible choices. Marcus almost smiled. Yes. Teresa stood up again. She walked to the coffee station in the corner and poured herself a cup from the pot that had been sitting on the burner for 3 hours. She drank it black, not because she liked it that way, but because she had trained herself years ago to stop wanting things that cost extra. There is a third choice, she said without turning around. What? You decode the manuscript. You understand everything your family has done, and then you give it to the police. Marcus felt something cold move through his chest. Not surprise. He had thought about it. Had thought about it every night for 2 weeks while Teresa translated pages that documented crimes the statute of limitations had not yet expired on. If I do that, Marcus said slowly, my father goes to prison. The 5 captains go to prison. 40 associates, maybe more. The entire organization collapses. And 17 families get justice for the people they lost. And I become an informant, a rat. In my world, there is no forgiveness for that. I would spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Teresa turned around. You would spend the rest of your life knowing you chose truth over loyalty to men who killed my husband. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Marcus stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the same view Teresa had been staring at minutes before. The city did not look beautiful to him anymore. It looked like a machine. Gears turning. People moving through predetermined paths. The illusion of choice in a system designed to limit it. "I have hated my father since I was 8 years old," Marcus said. Not to Teresa specifically, just out loud. "I watched him order something done to a man who had betrayed the family. I did not understand what was happening, but I saw my father's face when he gave the order. I saw that he did not hesitate, that it was easy for him, and I knew in that moment that I did not want to be him." He paused. "I have spent 27 years pretending to be his loyal son, learning the business, earning the respect of the captains, becoming the obvious heir, and the entire time I have been waiting for a chance to destroy him." Teresa set down her coffee cup. "Then do it." "It is not that simple." "It is exactly that simple. You have the evidence. You have 200 pages of crimes documented in your family's own hand. You give it to the FBI. They arrest everyone. Justice happens." "And what happens to you?" Marcus turned to face her. "The moment the FBI starts making arrests, they seize all family assets, including the pension fund your husband paid into, including the $25,000 you were given. You think they will let you keep blood money once they know what it is?" Teresa went very still. Marcus continued. "Your son starts college next year. You have been working 3 jobs to save $11,000. I gave you $5,000 to help decode this manuscript. That is $16,000. You need $22,000 more. If the FBI seizes everything, you lose the $5,000 I gave you. You lose whatever portion of the original settlement is still traceable. Your son does not go to college. Not next year. Maybe not ever." "So you are saying if I help you burn this down, my son pays the price?" "I am saying we both pay. You lose the money, I lose my life, and your husband still stays dead. Justice does not bring him back." Teresa picked up her coffee cup, looked into it, set it back down without drinking. "What is the alternative?" she asked. "You take over the family, you become the next boss, you write the next 200 pages. I become the boss and I make it clean, all white collar. No more incidents like the one that killed your husband. No more bodies. No more blood money. I turn it into what my father was trying to turn it into before the Alzheimer's started taking his mind. A business that operates in gray areas but does not kill people." "You think you can do that?" "I know I can." "You are 35 years old. You have never run a criminal organization. You think the men who have been doing this for 40 years will listen to a boy who wants to play it safe?" Marcus felt anger flare in his chest. "I am not a boy." "You are younger than my oldest son, and you are talking about controlling men who have killed people for less than being called soft." "I am smarter than they are. I have been planning this for 27 years. Teresa looked at him for a long moment. Something in her expression shifted, not softening exactly, but seeing something she had not seen before. "You do not want to destroy your father," she said quietly. "You want to replace him. You want to prove you can do what he did without becoming what he was. You want to be better." Marcus did not answer immediately. The truth of what she said settled over him like weight. "Yes," he said finally. Teresa nodded slowly. She walked back to the table and sat down. She pulled the stack of decoded pages toward her and began organizing them by date. "We have 53 days left," she said. "We are halfway through. If we keep working at this pace, we will finish with a week to spare." Marcus felt relief wash through him. "You are staying." "I am finishing the job you hired me for. After that, what you do with this manuscript is your choice. But I want you to know something, Mr. Caruso." She looked up at him. If you take over this family and someone else dies because you chose profit over safety, I will take this manuscript to the FBI myself. I do not care if I lose the money. I do not care if my son has to take loans or wait a year or go to community college. I will not let another woman get a check for $25,000 and think it is kindness when it is really guilt. Marcus met her eyes, understood. Good, now sit down. We have 107 pages left to decode. They worked in silence for the next 3 hours. The sun began to rise somewhere beyond the buildings to the east, turning the sky from black to gray to the pale orange that meant morning whether you were ready for it or not. At 6:45, Teresa packed up her notes. She had another job to get to. A hotel in Midtown where she cleaned rooms and reset beds and scrubbed bathrooms used by people who would never know her name. At the door, she paused. "Mr. Caruso," she said, "your father, how much time does he have left?" The doctor said 18 months. That was 3 months ago, so 15 maybe. And the Alzheimer's, how bad is it now? Some days he is sharp, remembers everything. Other days he forgets where he is, who I am. Yesterday he called me Vincent. That was his father's name. Teresa nodded. My mother had dementia, not Alzheimer's, but close enough. The forgetting is not the worst part. The worst part is the moments of clarity, when they remember enough to know how much they have lost. Marcus had not thought about it that way. Teresa opened the door. Decode the manuscript, Mr. Caruso. Understand what your father is trying to tell you, but do not mistake understanding for forgiveness. Some things should not be forgiven, even by sons. She left. Marcus stood alone in the conference room as the sun came up, and the city woke around him, and the manuscript waited on the table like a test that changed its questions every time you thought you had found the answers. 21 days before the deadline, Marcus received a phone call from a number he did not recognize. He was in his apartment in Tribeca, trying to sleep after another night of decoding with Teresa. They had finished page 143, 57 to go. The phone rang at 2 in the afternoon. Marcus had been asleep for 4 hours. He answered without looking at the screen. Yeah. A voice he knew but had not heard in months spoke from the other end. Smooth, confident, the voice of a man who had never been told no and never would be. Marcus, it is Angelo. Marcus sat up. Angelo Benedetti, the youngest captain, 55 years old and ambitious enough to be dangerous. What do you want, Angelo? To talk, in person, tonight. There is a restaurant in Little Italy, Gino's. You know it. I know it. 9 o'clock, just you and me. No associates, no records. Just 2 men having dinner and discussing the future. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. What future? The one coming in 21 days. When your 90 days are up and the board votes on succession. I want to make sure we understand each other before that happens. We understand each other fine, Angelo. I do not think we do. 9 o'clock, Gino's. If you do not show, I will assume you do not want to talk, and that would be unfortunate for both of us. The line went dead. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, holding the phone, thinking through the implications. Angelo reaching out directly violated the family's succession protocol. Captains did not contact the designated heir except through channels approved by the boss. Angelo knew this, had followed the rule for 25 years under Dominic's leadership. Which meant Angelo calling him now, bypassing the consigliere, ignoring the established chain of command, meant one of 2 things. Either Angelo was making a move and no longer cared about protocol, or Angelo knew Marcus was making a move and was trying to get ahead of it. Either way, not showing up would be worse than showing up. At 8:45, Marcus walked into Gino's. Old-school Italian restaurant, red-checkered tablecloths, candles in wine bottles, Sinatra on the speakers. The kind of place that had been serving the same food to the same families for 60 years and would keep doing it until the neighborhood changed too much to recognize. Angelo was already seated in a back booth. He wore a suit that cost more than most people made in a month. His hair was silver at the temples, perfectly styled. He looked like a man who had never worked with his hands and never would need to. Marcus slid into the booth across from him. Angelo smiled. "You came." "You asked." "I invited. There is a difference." A waiter appeared. Angelo ordered wine for both of them without asking Marcus what he wanted. An expensive bottle. The kind you order when you want someone to know you can afford it. When the waiter left, Angelo leaned back in the booth and studied Marcus the way an art dealer studies a painting he is considering buying. "You look tired," Angelo said. "I have been working." "On the cipher." Marcus kept his face neutral. "Yes." "How is that going?" "It is going." Angelo smiled wider. "You have been meeting with a woman, late nights. The conference room on the 32nd floor. She is a janitor in the building. Teresa Flynn, 48 years old. 2 sons, works 3 jobs. Husband died in a construction accident 12 years ago." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. "You have been watching me." "I have been watching everyone. That is how you survive in this business. You watch. You listen. You learn what people are doing before they know you know." The wine arrived. Angelo poured for both of them. Marcus did not touch his glass. "What do you want, Angelo?" "I want to help you." "I do not need your help." "You do, actually, because you are about to make a very large mistake, and I am offering you a chance to avoid it." Angelo sipped his wine, took his time, let the moment stretch. "You are planning to give the manuscript to the FBI," Angelo said. "You are going to decode it, document every crime the family has committed, and hand it over to federal agents. You think this makes you noble, a hero, the man who chose justice over loyalty." Marcus forced himself to remain still, to not react. "You are guessing." "I am observing. You hate your father, you always have. You have been pretending to be his loyal son, but I know better. I have been watching you since you were 20 years old, Marcus. I know what you are." "What am I?" "A traitor in waiting. A man who wants to destroy what he cannot control." Marcus picked up his wine glass, not to drink, just to have something to do with his hands that did not involve reaching across the table. "If you think I am planning to rat," Marcus said quietly, "why are you telling me you know? Why not just tell my father? Let him handle it." Angelo laughed, a genuine sound. He was enjoying this. "Because your father is dying," Angelo said. "His brain is turning to soup. Half the time he does not remember what day it is. And because I do not want to stop you, I want to join you." Marcus set down the wine glass very carefully. Angelo leaned forward. His voice dropped lower, intimate, conspiratorial. "Your father is finished. The other captains are old, tired, ready to retire. They have been running this family the same way for 40 years, and they are stuck in the past. But you and me, Marcus, we are younger. We see the future. We know how to adapt." "What are you proposing?" "A partnership. You give the manuscript to the FBI. You burn down the old guard. Your father, Sal Romano, Tony Grasso, Frank DeLuca, Paul Torino, all of them. They get arrested. The organization collapses. But before it does, you give me half." "Half of what?" "Half the network, half the contacts, half the infrastructure, the money laundering channels, the union connections, the political contacts. Everything your family has built over 92 years. You keep half, I keep half. You use your half to start over clean. New organization, new rules. I use my half to rebuild the old way. We split the territory. No conflict, no war, just two separate operations. Marcus stared at him. You want me to help you become a boss? I want us both to become bosses. You get your revenge against your father. I get my empire. Win-win. And if I refuse? Angelo's smile disappeared. His voice went flat, professional. If you refuse, I tell your father tonight. He kills you, the janitor, and anyone else who knows about your plan. Then I kill him during the chaos and take over anyway. But that is messy. I prefer clean. So I am giving you this one chance to choose the clean version. Marcus felt his mind racing through options. Angelo was not bluffing. He had the connections, the muscle, the ambition. If Marcus refused, Angelo would follow through. People would die. The manuscript would be destroyed. Everything Marcus had spent 5 weeks decoding would disappear. I need to think about it, Marcus said. You have until tomorrow night. Same time. Same place. You say yes, we plan the details. You say no, I make the call. 24 hours. Angelo stood up. He dropped $300 bills on the table, enough to cover the wine and leave an insulting tip. Think carefully, Marcus. You are young. You could live another 40 years, but only if you make smart choices. He walked out. Marcus sat alone in the booth, surrounded by the sounds of families eating dinner and waiters taking orders and Sinatra, singing about strangers in the night. He pulled out his phone and called Teresa. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Caruso, it is late. I am at my apartment. I need to meet you. Now it is urgent. What happened? Angelo knows. He knows about the manuscript. He knows I am planning something, and he wants in. Silence on the other end. Then Teresa's voice, quiet and controlled. Where are you? Little Italy, Gino's restaurant. Stay there. I will come to you. You do not have to. Yes, I do. You are in danger, which means I am in danger. Stay there. She hung up. Marcus sat in the booth and waited while the ice in his chest slowly spread to his hands and his thoughts and the future he had been planning for 27 years. Teresa arrived at Gino's 40 minutes after Marcus called. She came through the door like someone who had walked fast but was trying not to show it, her coat buttoned wrong and her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. The restaurant was nearly empty now. Just a few tables of old men drinking espresso and arguing about baseball in Italian that was more Brooklyn than Sicily. Marcus was still in the back booth where Angelo had left him. He had not touched the wine, had not moved except to check his phone every 3 minutes, waiting for a message that did not come. Teresa slid into the booth across from him. Her eyes were sharp, alert, reading his face the way she had learned to read the manuscript, looking for the meaning beneath the surface. Tell me everything, she said. Marcus told her, Angelo's surveillance, the partnership offer, the ultimatum, 24 hours to decide between joining a coup or being eliminated as a threat. Teresa listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat back against the red vinyl and closed her eyes for a moment. Marcus could see her thinking, calculating, running through scenarios the way she had run through dialect translations and symbol interpretations for the past 5 weeks. He is not bluffing, she said finally. I know. If you refuse, he will tell your father. Your father will have you killed. Then Angelo will use the chaos to take over anyway. Yes. And if you agree to partner with him, you help create a new criminal organization. You give him the infrastructure to rebuild everything you claim you want to destroy. Yes. Teresa opened her eyes. So there is no good choice. There is never a good choice, Marcus said. That is what my father tried to teach me. In our world, you choose between bad and worse. You choose the option that lets you survive long enough to make the next choice. That is a terrible way to live. It is the only way I know. Teresa reached across the table and took his wine glass. She drank half of it in one swallow, grimaced, set it down. I need to tell you something, she said. Something I should have told you 3 weeks ago. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. What? The FBI approached me 6 months ago. An agent named Laura Chen, Organized Crime Division. She knew my husband had died in a construction accident. She knew the settlement came from a shell company connected to the Caruso family. She asked me if I wanted to help them build a case. The restaurant around them seemed to go very quiet. Marcus could hear the espresso machine hissing behind the counter, the murmur of old men's voices, the sound of his own breathing. You have been working with the FBI, he said slowly. No, I refused. I told Agent Chen I did not want anything to do with it. I just wanted to take care of my sons and forget about the whole thing. But she stayed in contact. She calls me every few months, checks in, asks if I have changed my mind. I always say no. Until now. Teresa nodded. I called her tonight before I came here. I told her about the manuscript, about Angelo, about everything. Marcus felt the world tilt slightly, like standing on a ship in rough water, everything solid suddenly uncertain. Why? He asked. Because you are going to die if someone does not intervene. Because Angelo is going to take over the family whether you help him or not. Because 17 people died and their families deserve to know it was not just bad luck. It was choices. Your family's choices. Marcus leaned forward. His voice came out harder than he intended. You do not get to make that decision. This is my life, my family, my choice. You asked for my help decoding the manuscript. I gave it to you. Now I am asking for your help stopping the men who killed my husband. Will you give it to me? They stared at each other across the table. Two people who had spent 5 weeks building something fragile between them, something that might have been trust, or might have just been the temporary alliance of people who needed each other. That thing, whatever it was breaking now. Marcus spoke first. His voice was quieter. What did Agent Chen say? She wants to meet you. Tomorrow, before your deadline with Angelo, she can offer you protection, witness relocation, a new identity, a chance to walk away from all of this alive. In exchange for what? The manuscript, your testimony, everything you know about the family's operations. Marcus laughed. It was not a happy sound. So my choice is partner with Angelo and become a criminal, or partner with the FBI and become a rat. Your choice is die or live. You do not understand. In my world, being a rat is worse than dying. It is dying slowly, every day, knowing that somewhere someone is looking for you, someone who remembers what you did, someone with patience and resources and a long memory. Teresa's expression hardened. Your world killed my husband. Forgive me if I do not care about its rules. The waiter approached their table. Marcus waved him away without looking. If I give the manuscript to the FBI, Marcus said, my father goes to prison. He will die there. Alone. His mind already going. He will not remember his own name by the end. He deserves that. Maybe, but I am still his son. Then be a better son than he was a father. Break the cycle. Marcus stood up. He pulled out his wallet and dropped money on the table, enough to cover the wine and the booth and the conversation that had just ended something between them. I need to think, he said. You have until 9 o'clock tomorrow night. That is when Angelo expects your answer. Agent Chen says if you are going to meet with her, it has to be before then. Once Angelo makes his move, it will be too late to protect you. Marcus walked toward the door. Teresa called after him. Mr. Caruso. He stopped but did not turn around. I am sorry, she said. About your father, about all of it. But I lost my husband because someone chose money over doing the right thing. I will not let that happen to someone else's family if I can stop it. Marcus left without responding. Outside, the night was cold. November in New York, the kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there. He walked south through Little Italy, past restaurants closing for the night and shops with lights still on and old men smoking outside social clubs that had been there longer than he had been alive. He walked for an hour, maybe more. He was not paying attention to time or distance. He was thinking about choices. About the manuscript sitting in a safe in his apartment, 200 pages that documented 92 years of decisions that had seemed necessary at the time and inevitable in retrospect. His phone rang at midnight. He almost did not answer, but the number was his father's. Hello. Dominic's voice came through weak and confused. Marcus, where are you? I am walking, in the city. It is late. You should be home. I know. Are you safe? The question made Marcus stop walking. His father, dying slowly from a disease that was eating his memory one synapse at a time, was worried about whether his son was safe. It would have been touching if it were not so darkly ironic. I am fine, Dad. The cipher, have you decoded it? Most of it. I have 3 weeks left. Good, that is good. A pause. Marcus could hear breathing on the other end. Labored, tired. I need to tell you something while I still remember it. What? The cipher. It is not just a test. I know. It is a record, a confession. It is more than that. It is a choice I am giving you, the choice I never had. Marcus started walking again, slower now, listening. When I was your age, Dominic continued, my father was dying, cancer. He had 6 months. He gave me the cipher he had inherited from his father. I decoded it. And when I understood what it contained, what our family had built, I wanted to walk away. I wanted to be normal, have a normal job, a normal life. Why did you not? Because my father told me the same thing I am telling you. If I walk away, someone worse takes over. Angelo's father in that case. A brutal man. The kind who solves problems with violence first and thinks about consequences never. My father said the only way to make the family better was from inside. Change it gradually. Make it cleaner. Did you? I tried. For 25 years I tried. I made it less violent, more corporate. I reduced the body count. But I did not eliminate it. I could not. Because there are always situations where violence is the only option that makes sense. And each time I made that choice, I became more like my father, more like his father. Dominic's breathing was louder now, ragged. I am giving you the choice to refuse, Marcus. I am giving you evidence that will destroy me and everyone else. I put it in the cipher deliberately. Every crime, every name, everything the FBI would need to dismantle this organization completely. Marcus stopped walking. He was on Canal Street now, traffic moving past, headlights cutting through the dark. You want me to give it to the FBI, Marcus said. I want you to have the choice. Decode it and take over, become me, or decode it and burn it all down. Become who you should have been if I had been a better father. Why are you telling me this now? Because tomorrow I might not remember. The disease is moving fast. Some days I wake up and I do not know what year it is. I do not know if you are you or if you are me at your age. I am losing time. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. Not breaking, just fracturing enough to let something else in. Not forgiveness, but understanding. I hate you, Marcus said quietly. I have hated you since I was 8 years old. I know. But I do not want you to die in prison. I know that too. Silence on the line. Just breathing and the sound of the city and the distance between a father and son who had spent 35 years living in the same world but different realities. What would you do? Marcus asked. If you were me, what would you choose? Dominic was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was softer than Marcus had ever heard it. I would choose the thing that lets you sleep at night. Everything else is just survival. But sleep is peace. And peace is the only thing worth having in the end. The line went dead. Marcus stood on Canal Street with his phone in his hand and his father's words in his head, and a choice that was no longer between bad and worse, but between who he had been and who he could become. He called Teresa. She answered immediately. Mr. Caruso. Set up the meeting with Agent Chen. Tomorrow, early, before Angelo's deadline. You are sure? No, but I am choosing anyway. The meeting happened in a safe house in Queens, an anonymous apartment in a building that could have been anywhere. Agent Laura Chen was 45, Chinese-American, with short hair and the kind of eyes that had seen enough lies to recognize truth when it showed up. She sat across from Marcus at a kitchen table that wobbled slightly when you leaned on it. Teresa sat beside Marcus. Between them on the table was a copy of the manuscript, all 200 pages, reproduced and organized and annotated with Teresa's translations. Agent Chen read for 20 minutes without speaking. She made notes on a legal pad. Her expression never changed, professional, controlled, but Marcus could see her hand tighten on the pen when she reached page 87. Sean Flynn's death, Teresa's husband. When she finished, she set down the pen and looked at Marcus. This is enough to indict your father and the entire board of captains. RICO charges, murder, racketeering, bribery. We could dismantle the organization completely. I know. But you understand what this means for you. The moment we make arrests, you become a target, not just from your family, from every organization that does business with them. You will need to disappear. New identity, new city, probably new country. I understand. And you, Agent Chen turned to Teresa. You are a civilian. You do not have to be part of this. We can protect Mr. Caruso without your testimony. Teresa shook her head. I decoded the manuscript. I know what is in it. I want to testify. Your sons are adults. They will understand. Agent Chen nodded slowly. She picked up the manuscript and held it like it weighed more than paper should weigh. There is one complication, she said. Angelo Benedetti. If he knows about your plan to cooperate, he will move against you before we can move against him. We need to control the timing. He gave me until 9 tonight to agree to partner with him, Marcus said. If I refuse, he tells my father. Then everything falls apart. So we move first. We arrest everyone this afternoon, before Angelo's deadline, before he has a chance to retaliate. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This afternoon. We have been building a case against the Caruso family for 3 years. We have surveillance, wiretaps, financial records. The manuscript is the final piece. With your testimony, we can move today. My father. Agent Chen's expression softened slightly. I am sorry. I know this is not easy. But if we wait, people die. Maybe you, maybe Ms. Flynn, maybe others. Marcus looked at Teresa. She met his eyes, nodded once. He turned back to Agent Chen. Do it. The arrests happened at 4 in the afternoon. Coordinated raids across New York and New Jersey. FBI agents with warrants and tactical gear moving through restaurants and social clubs and private offices. Dominic Caruso was arrested at his apartment in the Upper East Side. He did not resist. According to the arresting agent's report, he seemed confused, kept asking what year it was, whether his father was still alive. Sal Romano was taken from his home in Staten Island. Tony Grasso from a construction site in Queens. Frank DeLuca from his restaurant in Little Italy. Paul Torino from a waste management facility in New Jersey. Angelo Benedetti was arrested at Gino's restaurant, sitting in the same booth where he had threatened Marcus 24 hours earlier. He smiled when the agents read him his rights, like he had been expecting it, like he had already planned 3 moves ahead. By 6 o'clock, the news was everywhere. Cable news, social media, newspapers already writing the stories that would run in the morning. The biggest organized crime bust in New York in 20 years. The Caruso family dismantled in a single afternoon. Marcus watched the coverage from the safe house in Queens. Teresa sat beside him, neither of them speaking, just watching the images of men in suits being led out of buildings in handcuffs. Men who had seemed untouchable that morning and were facing life in prison by evening. On the screen, a reporter stood outside the federal courthouse, talking about RICO charges and decades of criminal enterprise, and a manuscript that documented it all. The reporter did not mention Marcus's name. Part of the cooperation agreement, his identity as an informant would be protected, for now. But Marcus knew how these things worked. Secrets did not stay secret forever. Eventually, someone would talk, someone would leak, someone would figure out who had given the FBI the manuscript. And then the real test would begin. The trial took 8 months. Federal Court, Southern District of New York. The prosecution called 63 witnesses, presented 14,000 pages of evidence, played hours of wiretap recordings. Marcus testified for 6 days. He sat in the witness box and explained the cipher, translated the symbols, named the names, connected the dots between the numbers on the page and the crimes they represented. His father sat at the defense table, flanked by lawyers who cost $1,000 an hour and could not change the facts. Dominic looked smaller than Marcus remembered. Thinner. His hair had gone completely white. Some days he seemed to follow the testimony. Other days he stared at the ceiling like he was trying to remember where he was. On the 4th day of Marcus's testimony, Dominic's lawyer requested a competency evaluation. The judge agreed. A psychiatrist examined Dominic and reported that he had advanced Alzheimer's disease, could not remember basic facts about his own life, could not assist in his own defense. The judge ruled that Dominic was not competent to stand trial. He was remanded to a federal medical facility for prisoners with cognitive impairments. Essentially, a prison hospital where he would live out whatever time he had left. The other 4 captains were not so fortunate. The trial continued without Dominic. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Guilty on all counts. Sal Romano, life without parole. Tony Grasso, 60 years. Frank DeLuca, 55 years. Paul Torino, 50 years. Angelo Benedetti, life without parole plus an additional 25 years for attempted conspiracy to commit murder. The recordings Marcus had made of their conversation at Gino's had been enough to add that charge. When the verdicts were read, Angelo looked directly at Marcus in the gallery. He smiled, mouthed 2 words, "See you." Marcus understood the message. Prison was not the end. It was just a different playing field. And men like Angelo had long memories and patient friends. 2 years after the trial, Marcus lived in Portland, Oregon, under the name Mark Carter. He was 37 years old but felt older. The kind of older that comes from carrying weight that never gets lighter. He worked as an accountant for a nonprofit that helped victims of white-collar crime. The irony was not lost on him. He spent his days helping people recover from the kind of crimes his family had committed for 92 years. He lived in a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. He did not make friends, did not date, did not put down roots. He knew better. Witness protection was supposed to be permanent, but nothing was permanent when you had the kind of enemies he had. Teresa lived in the same city, different neighborhood. She had a new name, too, Teresa Carter. The cover story was that they were siblings. It explained why they knew each other without raising questions. She worked at a community college library, had finally gotten her degree online during the long months of the trial. Her sons visited twice a year. They knew the truth, knew what their mother had done. One was proud, one was conflicted. Both loved her enough to keep showing up. Marcus and Teresa met once a month for coffee, always a different place, always careful. They did not talk about the past, did not talk about the trial or the family or the manuscript that had changed both their lives. Mostly they sat in silence. Two people who had survived the same war and did not need to explain the scars to each other. On a Tuesday in November, 3 years after the trial, Marcus received a phone call from the federal medical facility where his father was being held. Dominic had died in his sleep. Peacefully, the doctor said. His brain had deteriorated to the point where he no longer knew who or where he was. In the end, the doctor said, he probably did not know he was dying. The disease had taken that from him, too. Marcus flew to New York for the funeral. Small service. Just Marcus and a priest and 2 FBI agents assigned to security detail. They buried Dominic in a cemetery in Queens. Unmarked grave. The family name had been too toxic to put on a headstone. After the service, Marcus stood alone at the grave. The agents waited at a distance. Professional, giving him space. Marcus tried to think of something to say. Some final words that would give meaning to the complicated thing that had existed between him and his father. But nothing came. In the end, he just said what was true. I decoded your cipher, Dad. I understood what you were trying to tell me, and I made a choice. I chose to be different. I do not know if it was the right choice, but it was mine. He paused. I hope you found peace. I hope the disease took the memories that hurt. I hope at the end you did not remember what you had done or who you had been. I hope you just slept. Marcus walked away. The agents followed at a distance. He flew back to Portland that evening. 5 years after the trial, Marcus Carter sat in his small office at the nonprofit, reviewing files for families who had lost their retirement savings to investment fraud. It was detail work, quiet, the kind of job where you could disappear into spreadsheets and nobody asked questions about your past. His phone rang, unknown number. He almost did not answer, but unknown numbers were part of his life now. Could be the FBI checking in, could be his case agent with a security update, could be nothing. He answered. Hello. A voice he had not heard in 5 years spoke from the other end. Rough, older, but unmistakable. Marcus, it is Angelo. Every muscle in Marcus's body went rigid. How did you get this number? I have friends. Even in prison, I have friends. Friends who are patient. Friends who remember. What do you want? To tell you that I am dying. Cancer, lung cancer. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe less. Marcus said nothing. Angelo continued. I spent 5 years planning how I would get to you when I got out, how I would make you pay for what you did. But now I am dying, and I do not have time for revenge, so I am calling to give you something instead. What? A confession, my confession. 11 murders, unsolved cases. I put the details in a letter. Names, dates, locations, bodies that were never found. I am sending it to your attention. Give it to the FBI. Let those families have closure. Why? Because I have no one to leave my confession to. No son to pass my sins to. No legacy except violence. You destroyed my chance to build something. So I am giving you the only thing I have left. The truth about what I did. Silence on the line. I do not forgive you, Marcus, and you do not forgive me, but we both know what it costs to carry secrets. Let me die without carrying mine. Angelo hung up. 3 days later, a letter arrived. 11 pages, handwritten. 11 murders described in detail. Marcus gave it to his FBI handler. The letter closed 11 cold cases. 11 families got answers. Angelo Benedetti died in federal prison 4 months later. Alone. No visitors, no service. Marcus read about it in the newspaper. He felt nothing, not satisfaction, not grief, just the quiet acknowledgement that another piece of the past had been put to rest. 10 years after the trial, on a Saturday in October, Marcus received an invitation to a wedding. Teresa's youngest son was getting married. The ceremony would be in Seattle. Small service. Family only. The invitation included a handwritten note. You are family. Please come. Marcus almost declined. Weddings were public, visible. The kind of event where someone might recognize him despite the new name and the 10 years of distance. But he thought about Teresa. Thought about the nights they had spent decoding the manuscript together. Thought about the choice she had made to help him, even knowing what it would cost. He went. The wedding was small. 30 people. Teresa's sons and their partners. A few friends. Marcus sat in the back, uncomfortable in the suit he rarely wore, watching a family celebrate something good in a world that had given them plenty of reasons not to celebrate. At the reception, Teresa found him standing alone near the bar. You came, she said. You invited me. I did not think you would. Neither did I. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. The kind of silence that only exists between people who have been through something together and come out the other side. How are you? Teresa asked. Alive. That is more than I expected 10 years ago. Is it enough? Marcus considered the question. Some days, other days I wonder if I made the right choice, if things would have been different if I had just walked away. Let Angelo take over. Let the cycle continue. 17 families got justice because you did not walk away. My husband got justice. Justice does not bring him back. No, but it means his death mattered. That someone cared enough to make it right. Marcus nodded. He looked around the room, at the people dancing and laughing and celebrating, at the life Teresa had rebuilt from the wreckage. Your sons, he said, they seem happy. They are, both of them. Good jobs, good partners, good lives. They do not carry what I carried. That is enough. The music changed, something slower. Couples moved onto the dance floor. Thank you, Marcus said. For what? For forcing me to choose, for calling the FBI, for making me do the thing I did not want to do but needed to do. Teresa smiled. You would have chosen it eventually. You are too smart not to. Maybe, but I am glad I did not have to choose alone. Teresa reached out and squeezed his hand briefly, a small gesture. Then she returned to her family. Marcus stayed for another hour. Then he left quietly, drove back to his small apartment in Portland, sat on his couch in the dark and thought about choices and consequences and the distance between who we are and who we wish we had been. His phone sat on the table, silent, no threats, no warnings, just quiet. For now, that was enough. 15 years after the trial, Marcus Carter was 50 years old. He still worked at the nonprofit, still lived in the same small apartment, still met Teresa once a month for coffee. He had outlived his father by 8 years, had outlived Angelo by 10, had outlived the family empire that was supposed to be his inheritance. Sometimes he wondered what would have happened if he had made different choices, if he had partnered with Angelo, if he had taken over the family, if he had walked away and let it all burn without his involvement. But those were different lives, different versions of himself that existed only in imagination. This was the life he had chosen, quiet, anonymous, safe. Not the life he had expected, but the life he had earned. And on the good days, when the nightmares stayed away and the past felt distant enough to breathe, he thought maybe that was enough. Maybe peace was not about forgetting. Maybe it was about living with what you remembered and choosing, every day, to be different than what came before. The manuscript, the original 200 pages in his father's handwriting, was sealed in an evidence locker somewhere, part of a closed case, part of history. But Marcus remembered every page, every symbol, every crime encoded in a language designed to hide truth from outsiders and reveal it to family. He had decoded it, had understood it, had used it to destroy the thing it was meant to protect. And in doing so, had finally become the thing his father had never been able to be. Free,